Well, hello guys, hope you're all doing well and welcome back to the channel. So this week I've actually had COVID for the last 8 days or so and haven't been too well with it. So I thought today, because I've had quite a lot of questions about how I process my image and what my workflow is, we'd walk through that and I'd show you my process for dealing with all my images. So guys, here we are in Lightroom, and this is primarily how I edit my images. As you can see, I bring them in as RAW files, RAF files, because obviously I use the Fujifilm GFX 50S2, and my processing has dramatically reduced since I actually went with that camera, and that was one of the selling points actually for actually buying that camera, as far as I'm concerned, is that it was way easier to use for me and I had very limited processing to do, and that's hugely important for me in my workflow. I don't want to spend hours having to sit there and edit my images if I can possibly help it. So with all that in mind, let's get into this first image. And this is an image that I took while on a one-to-one workshop with a client over at Bamburgh in Northumberland. So I'll just run through the basics of what I do. As I say, it's not going to be hugely life-changing for you guys because I don't honestly do a lot of processing. So let's get a start. So what do I usually start with? Well, I always click on the auto button just to see how it starts off the image and whether it leaves me a good starting point. So let's click on that and see what it does. And yeah, to be honest, it's done an okay job. It's added a bit more contrast to that. It's upped the exposure slightly, although I'm going to have to do that a little more. So that's kind of where I would start off. Now, looking at the image, obviously it's quite dark, so let's go and see what it looks like if I increase the exposure. Yeah, so I'd probably be tempted to go somewhere around there, maybe a little bit more. And that's the good thing about the Lightroom now is the masking, because I use that quite a bit. So what I'll do is I'll click on the sky and I'll probably bring that down maybe to about -15 again on that side. And I'm watching what's going on over here on my histogram as well at the same time. I'll probably increase the contrast slightly. And then, yeah, that's about probably where I would have it. Now, what I'll do with that masking is, I've done that for the sky, and I'll select the sky again, and then I invert the mask, like that. And primarily what I do here is the whites. So I bring up the whites, and you can see what that's doing there. That's making that lower part of the image just pop that little more. And it's bringing this water a little bit more to life down in the lower section of the image. And then I'll probably leave that just about there. Now you'll notice here in the profiles, this is what I also do every time, is because Fujifilm give me quite a few of their default profiles, I always go through those and just have a look and see if I like the look of any of these, because once I actually take this into Photoshop, which is more or less my last step, then I can't actually add these profiles anymore. Now my two favourites tend to be Classic Chrome or the Audiio Soft. So I'll probably go Audiio Soft with this just to give it a bit more punch. But that obviously won't remain like that. I'll actually adjust that again later. So now that we have that, I'll go through and I'll just double check everything again. Now vibrance is okay, saturation's at -2 anyway. There's not a lot of detail to bring back in the sky up here, so I'll probably leave that as is. So what we'll actually do now is I mark that with 1 star, so I know that's the one I'm working on. And then I'll go edit in, and then I shall open it in Photoshop. And I'll show you for the reason for that next. Right, so now that we have it open in Photoshop, you'll notice I have a couple of tools down the side here. One of which is Pro Panel by John Weatherby, and I use this one all the time. It's basically because it has all the tools that I generally use in one place without having to go through Photoshop and find it all. So my first job inside Photoshop will be to look for any elements that I find distracting and want rid of. So what I'll tend to do is use the healing tool, and likes of this down here I will probably get rid of. So I'll zoom into it. It's obviously just a little bit of seaweed there and I'm finding it quite distracting, so I'm just going to get rid of that now. So just adjust the size of my brush, and then I'm just going to paint over that, and I'll probably do it in a couple of sweeps to make sure it does a good job of it, and just let that remove. And then I'll just do the same with this next bit down here. And looking at that, it's done a fairly good job there, so I'm just going to go back and fit the screen again. And there we go, that's done a fairly decent job of that and got rid of that little distraction. Now my next process will be to go into the Pro Panel, and the reason why I use this is because it gets me quickly to auto color or auto tone. So I use one or the other. So we'll try auto color first, and there we go. It just gets rid of any color cast that was in my original image, and you can see it looks a lot more natural looking now. It's got rid of all of those magenta colors that were in there. So now that it's done that, you can see it's a lot more natural looking. So the other tool I use is Lumenzia, and the reason I use this is for luminosity masking. So this is just the one that I find works the best for me, but there are obviously others out there. So I'm just going to click on that and see how it brings it up for me. Now obviously I'm looking at the whites, so probably somewhere around about the 2, because I want to target this area down here. So I'm just going to select dodge and burn on that, because basically what I want to be able to do is target the white of the actual waves coming in here, because I want to lighten this section down here. So with that in mind, I'm just going to switch the mask to a white mask, and then I'm going to come out of there and go to my brush. I'm obviously going to have to increase the size of that brush because it's tiny. There we go. Just a bit more. So I want a large brush. There we go. And I just want to affect this area down here. So I'm just going to paint across that. And you can see it's might be quite difficult to see on screen here, but it's just lightening the brightness of those waves just in the bottom here, and it's just targeting. It's not going where the black is down here, it's only targeting the white areas down here, and that's where I really want to be paying attention to. So I'm just going to keep painting across those, and that should just lighten those areas. You can see it's just appeared down here. If I turn that on and off, it's really, really subtle. You can barely see it. And that's what I like about luminosity masking. You can adjust the intensity to suit you. I'm only at 10% opacity at the minute, so if I increase that somewhere about 42 or something like that, and I paint over it again, you should probably see more of a difference now. There we go. And it's just because I want that bottom left of the frame to actually show that the movement in those waves there. Just going to move that toolbar out of the way. And there we go. So if I turn that on and off now, you should see more of a difference. You see that? So that's probably where I would leave that image. So I'll just file and save, and that'll take it back into Lightroom again, and then we can see where we are from there. So now that's the image we've just been working on inside Photoshop, and if I make that large screen now so we can have a look at it again, you can see it's looking a lot nicer now, a lot more natural from what it was looking before. The bit that concerns me slightly again though is down here. This water's looking kind of blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the masking inside of Lightroom again and use a linear gradient just to target that lower portion of the image and bring that down, because I don't want to affect anything above that line really, if I can help it. Always bear in mind with this editing, it's personal preference how you actually do this, but this is just my process. So what I'll actually do now is go to color temperature, and I'm just going to warm up that bottom section of the image slightly so I can get rid of the kind of blue tones down here, and I think that looks way more natural then. And there we go. That's probably about where I would leave that image. I'm just looking over here and it looks as though I'm just starting to clip on the highlights over here, so we'll just reduce that slightly. And I'm just reducing it until I see that little red arrow up here just switch off. So I'll just reduce my highlights just on that point. And there we go. That's the finished image. That's probably where I would leave it at that point. So you can see that I don't do a great deal of alterations to my images at all. I just enhance what's already there if I can perfectly help it, and just really simple edits. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I just wanted to show you through my simple workflow for editing my images. As I said before, because I've moved over to this Fuji system, I find I don't have to edit not near as much as I used to before. Anyway, thanks very much for watching guys. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next video soon. Take care. Bye bye.